Jake Morrison stood in the ruins of what used to be his home. Smoke still rose from the burned walls. Broken glass covered the floor where his daughter Amy used to play her music. The smell of burned metal and wood filled the air. Everything he had built on Colony Prime was gone. His hands shook as he picked up a photo from the ground. It showed Amy on her 16th birthday last month. She was smiling and holding the combat knife he had given her. Jake had taught her how to use it. He had taught her how to fight. But it had not been enough. The attack had happened 3 days ago. Jake had been on a supply run to the outer colonies when the Zephyrian ships came. They had hit fast and hard. Half the settlement was destroyed. 43 people were dead. 27 were missing, including Amy. Jake's wife Lisa walked up behind him. Her face was pale and her eyes were red from crying. She held a data pad with the security footage from the attack. Jake did not want to watch it again, but he had to. He needed to see what happened to his daughter. The footage showed Amy in their kitchen when the first explosion started. She grabbed her knife and ran toward the front door. Jake felt proud watching her move. She was fast and smart, just like he had trained her to be. But then the Zephyrians broke through the door. There were too many of them. Amy fought like a warrior. She cut 2 of them before they got her down. But there were 8 Zephyrians, and only 1 of her. They put electric chains on her hands and feet. Jake watched them drag his daughter away. His heart felt like it was breaking. They knew where to find her, Lisa said quietly. They went straight to our house. This was not random, Jake. Someone told them about Amy. Jake nodded. He had been thinking the same thing. The Zephyrians were slave traders, but they usually took easy targets. They did not attack well-defended colonies. They did not target the families of famous human warriors, unless someone paid them to do it. Jake Morrison was known across 17 star systems. He had fought in the Kepler War and won battles that everyone said were impossible. He had destroyed 3 alien fleets with 1 damaged ship. He had saved human colonies from invasion and slavery, but he had also made enemies. The Galactic Council had already sent their response. Commander Stevens had read it to them an hour ago. They would file formal complaints. They would ask for meetings. They would talk and talk until everyone forgot about the missing humans. Jake had heard this before. The council was good at talking but bad at fighting. "What are you going to do?" Lisa asked. She knew her husband well enough to see the look in his eyes. It was the same look he had during the war, cold and focused and very dangerous. "I am going to get our daughter back," Jake said. His voice was quiet but hard as steel. "And I am going to make sure the Zephyrians never hurt another human family." Lisa put her hand on his arm. "The council said they would handle it. Maybe we should wait and see what they can do." Jake looked at his wife. She was a good woman and she wanted to believe the best about people. But Jake had been a soldier for 20 years. He knew that sometimes talking was not enough. Sometimes you had to fight. "The council will take months to do anything," Jake said. "By then, Amy will be sold to some alien who thinks humans are pets. I will not let that happen to our daughter." Jake walked to the wreckage of his workshop. Most of his equipment was destroyed, but his gun safe was still intact. The thick metal had protected his weapons from the fire. He opened it and took out his old service pistol. The weight of it felt familiar in his hand. Lisa watched him check the weapon. "You cannot fight the entire Zephyrian collective by yourself." "I will not be alone," Jake said. He pulled out his communication device and started making calls. The first was to Pete Collins, his old first officer from the war. Pete answered on the second ring. "Jake, I heard about Amy. I am sorry, friend. What do you need?" "I need the Iron Wolf ready to fly in 6 hours. Can you do it?" Pete was quiet for a moment. The Iron Wolf was Jake's old ship from the war. It was supposed to be retired, but Pete had been keeping it in working order. Just in case. "The ship is ready now," Pete said. "Maria and Dan are all ready. On board. We figured you would call." Jake smiled for the first time in 3 days. His old crew knew him well. Maria Santos was the best engineer in human space. Dan Parker was a communications expert who could hack any alien system. Together they had fought impossible battles and won. Good. Start plotting courses to the outer rim. That is where the Zephyrians take their slaves. Already done, Pete said. We have 3 possible routes mapped out. When do we leave? As soon as I get there. Jake hung up and turned to Lisa. She was crying again, but she was also proud. She had married a warrior, and she knew what that meant. Bring her home. Lisa said, bring our daughter home. Jake kissed his wife and walked toward his transport. He had a ship to catch and aliens to hunt. The Zephyrians had made a big mistake when they took Amy Morrison. They had just made the most dangerous human in the galaxy very angry. The Iron Wolf was waiting at the spaceport. It was not the biggest ship or the newest ship, but it was Jake's ship. He had fought 30 battles in it during the war. It had taken him from a young officer to a legend. Now it would take him to get his daughter back. Pete Collins was waiting at the airlock. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his face from the war. He had served with Jake for 10 years and never questioned his orders. He was not going to start now. The crew is ready, Pete said as they walked toward the bridge. Maria has the engines running hot. Dan has been monitoring Zephyrian communications. We think we know where they are taking the prisoners. Jake sat in his captain's chair and felt the ship around him. The Iron Wolf was old, but it was tough. It had survived the war because Jake knew how to use it. He was going to need all his skill for what came next. Set course for the rim territories, Jake ordered. Maximum speed. The ship jumped to hyperspace. Stars streaked past the windows as they flew toward the edge of known space. That was where the Zephyrians did their business. That was where they sold humans like cattle. Jake looked at the photo of Amy that he had brought from home. She was smiling and happy in the picture. She did not know that aliens wanted to hurt her family. She did not know that her father was famous for killing aliens who threatened humans, but she would know soon. Jake Morrison was coming for his daughter, and the galaxy was about to remember why humans were the most dangerous species in known space. The Zephyrians had started this fight, but Jake was going to finish it. The hunt had begun. The Iron Wolf flew through hyperspace for 2 days before reaching the Outer Rim territories. Jake spent most of that time in his cabin, studying everything he could find about the Zephyrian collective. He read their trade routes, their ship designs, and their methods for capturing slaves. Every piece of information might help him find Amy. Pete Collins brought him food and reports from the crew. Maria Santos had the engines running perfectly. The ship could outrun most Zephyrian vessels if they needed to escape quickly. Dan Parker had been listening to alien radio signals trying to find clues about where the prisoners were taken. I found something, Dan said as he entered Jake's cabin. He carried a data pad with decoded messages. The Zephyrians have been talking about a special cargo. They say it will bring a high price at the next auction. Jake looked at the messages. They were written in the Zephyrian trade language, but Dan had translated them. One message mentioned a human female, young and strong, who fought like a warrior. Jake's heart beat faster. That sounded like Amy. Where is the auction? Jake asked. A place called Haven Station. It is 3 days from here near the Kepler Nebula. Big trading post for all kinds of illegal business. Jake knew about Haven Station. It was built inside a large asteroid and run by criminals from a dozen different species. The Galactic Council had no power there. It was the perfect place for slave traders to do business. Set course for Haven Station, Jake ordered. But we go in quiet. I want to see what we are dealing with before we make our move. The Iron Wolf changed direction and headed for the Nebula. Jake went to the weapons storage and started preparing for battle. He cleaned his rifle and checked his armor. He sharpened his combat knife. If the Zephyrians wanted a fight, he would give them one they would never forget. Maria came to find him while he worked on his weapons. She was a small woman with dark hair and quick hands that could fix anything mechanical. She had been with Jake's crew since the beginning of the war. I have been thinking about our approach, she said. Haven Station has heavy shields and lots of weapons. We cannot just fly in shooting, we need a plan. Jake nodded. Maria was right. Haven Station was defended like a fortress. A direct attack would get them all killed and would not save Amy. He needed to be smarter than that. "What do you suggest?" Jake asked. "We go in like traitors. I can modify our ship's identification codes, make it look like we are carrying cargo to sell. That gets us inside without a fight." Jake thought about it. It was a good idea, but dangerous. If anyone recognized him, they would be in trouble. Jake Morrison was famous enough that most criminals knew his face. "I will need a disguise," Jake said, "and we will need something to trade. What do we have that looks valuable?" Maria smiled. "I have been working on that. Remember those Kepler war battle records you keep in your cabin? They are worth a lot of money to collectors. We can pretend to be selling rare human military data." It was a clever plan. Military information from famous battles always found buyers in the outer rim. Jake did not like the idea of selling his war records, even fake ones, but it would get them close to Amy. Dan Parker joined them in the weapons storage. He had more information from his radio monitoring. "I intercepted a message about the auction. Schedule. It happens in 2 days. They are expecting buyers from across the galaxy." "How many prisoners?" Jake asked. "Over 200 from different species. Humans, Altarians, even some Zephyrians who got on the wrong side of their own people." Jake felt sick thinking about all those people being sold like animals. But he had to focus on Amy first. Once she was safe, maybe he could help the others. The Iron Wolf reached the Kepler Nebula 12 hours later. The nebula was a cloud of gas and dust that made sensors work poorly. It was a good place to hide illegal activities. Haven Station sat in the middle of it, a dark metal asteroid with ships coming and going constantly. Jake put on his disguise. Maria had given him fake hair and skin paint to change his appearance. He wore the clothes of a traitor instead of his military uniform. Pete and the others did the same. They had to look like criminals, not war heroes. "Remember," Jake said as they approached the station, "we are here to sell information and buy supplies. Keep your eyes open for the prisoners, but do not do anything stupid. We get one chance at this." Haven Station was bigger than Jake expected. The asteroid had been hollowed out and filled with shops, bars, and warehouses. Thousands of beings from dozens of species walked the corridors. The air smelled like fuel and exotic foods and things Jake did not want to identify. They docked their ship and paid the station fees. The dock worker was a thin alien with 4 arms who did not look at them closely. Jake was glad his disguise was working. The crew split up to gather information. Pete went to the bars to listen for talk about the auction. Maria visited the technical shops to learn about station security. Dan found a communication center where he could monitor more radio signals. Jake walked through the main market area. He saw weapons for sale, illegal drugs, and stolen goods from across the galaxy. Everything here was for sale if you had enough money, including people. He found what he was looking for in a back corridor. A Zephyrian in expensive clothes was talking to potential buyers about the upcoming auction. Jake stayed in the shadows and listened. "We have the finest selection in months," the Zephyrian was saying. "Humans are always popular, especially the young ones. We have one special item that will bring a very high price." Jake's hands clenched into fists. He wanted to kill the alien right there, but that would ruin everything. He had to be patient. The Zephyrian continued talking about the prisoners like they were objects. Jake learned that they were being kept in the lower levels of the station. Heavy security, guard robots and armed Zephyrians. It would not be easy to reach them. Jake met his crew back at the ship that night. Everyone had learned useful information. Pete had found a bar where off-duty guards talked too much. Maria had mapped the station's power systems. Dan had intercepted the guard duty schedules. "The auction is tomorrow night," Dan reported. "They will bring all the prisoners to the main hall. Buyers can inspect them before bidding starts." Jake felt his anger rising again. The idea of strangers looking at Amy like she was merchandise made him want to start shooting. But he forced himself to stay calm. "That might be our best chance," he said. "When they move the prisoners, security will be focused on the hall. We can create a distraction and get them out." Pete looked worried. "There will be hundreds of criminals in that hall. If shooting starts, it will be chaos." "Good," Jake said. "Chaos works for us. These people do not expect a real fight. They are used to dealing with helpless prisoners. Maria was already working on modifications to their equipment. I can overload the station's power grid from here. That will kill the lights and most of their security systems. Jake smiled. His crew was the best in human space. They had won impossible battles before. They could do it again. We go tomorrow night, Jake decided. One way or another, we are bringing Amy home. The hunt was about to become a battle. Jake Morrison was done being careful. The Zephyrians were about to learn what happened when you took something from the most dangerous human in the galaxy. The auction hall was packed with criminals from across the galaxy. Jake Morrison stood in the crowd wearing his disguise, watching as alien buyers examined the prisoners like they were buying livestock. His heart pounded as he searched for Amy among the captives. The Zephyrians had brought out 50 prisoners for the first round of bidding. They were chained together in groups of 5, standing on a raised platform where buyers could see them clearly. Jake saw humans, Altarians, and other species all looking scared and broken. Then he saw her. Amy was in the third group, standing tall despite the chains on her wrists and ankles. She had a cut on her face and her clothes were torn, but her eyes were still fierce. Jake felt proud and angry at the same time. Even as a prisoner, his daughter looked like a fighter. Amy's eyes moved across the crowd, and for a moment Jake thought she might have seen him. But she showed no recognition. She was smart enough not to give anything away, even if she had spotted her father. The auctioneer was a fat Zephyrian who spoke in several languages to attract more buyers. He started with the older prisoners, selling them for work in mines and factories. The prices were low because these people looked tired and weak. Jake touched the communication device hidden in his ear. I see her, he whispered. Third group from the left. She looks unhurt. Pete's voice came back quietly. Good. Maria is ready to cut the power. Dan has the escape route mapped. Just give us the signal. Jake waited and watched. He needed to time this perfectly. Too early and the guards would have time to secure the prisoners. Too late and Amy might be sold to someone who would take her away from the station. The bidding moved through the first 2 groups quickly. Jake saw the despair in the prisoners' faces as they were sold to aliens who would use them as slaves. He promised himself that when this was over, he would come back for the others. The auctioneer called for the third group to step forward. Amy and 4 other humans were pushed onto the center of the platform. The crowd of buyers moved closer to get a better look. This group includes a special prize, the auctioneer announced. A young human female trained in combat. She killed 2 of our guards during capture, perfect for gladiator games or personal protection. Jake's hands tightened on his rifle. These aliens were talking about his daughter like she was a weapon to be bought and used. He had heard enough. Now, he said into his communicator. The lights went out. Maria had overloaded the power grid exactly as planned. Emergency lighting came on a few seconds later, but it was dim and red. The auction hall fell into chaos as buyers and guards tried to figure out what was happening. Jake threw off his disguise and pulled out his rifle. He was done hiding. Amy, he shouted over the noise. Get down! Amy dropped to the platform floor, pulling the other prisoners with her. She had recognized her father's voice instantly. Jake started shooting at the Zephyrian guards around the platform. The first guard went down before he could draw his weapon. The second managed to fire a shot that missed Jake by inches. The third tried to use a prisoner as a shield, but Jake put a bullet through his head anyway. Panic spread through the crowd. Some buyers ran for the exits, others pulled out their own weapons and started shooting. The auction hall became a battlefield in seconds. Pete Collins appeared on Jake's left, his rifle cutting down guards who were trying to reach the prisoners. Maria Santos came from the right, carrying a bag full of explosives. Dan Parker was somewhere, in the crowd, jamming the station's communication system so no one could call for help. Jake fought his way toward the platform where Amy was still chained. A Zephyrian with a heavy laser rifle tried to stop him. Jake shot the alien twice in the chest and kept moving. Dad, Amy called out. The keys are on the guard captain. Big one with the red armor. Jake saw the Zephyrian she meant. He was a huge alien with scarred skin and military decorations on his armor. The captain was shouting orders and trying to organize his guards. He had a ring of keys hanging from his belt. Jake and the captain saw each other at the same time. The Zephyrian raised his weapon, but Jake was faster. His first shot hit the alien's shoulder. His second shot hit the chest. The captain fell backward, dropping his rifle. Jake ran to the fallen guard and grabbed the keys. Around him, the battle was getting worse. More guards were arriving, and some of the criminal buyers had joined the fight against Jake's crew. Amy was waiting when Jake reached the platform. "About time," she said with a small smile. "I was starting to think you forgot about me." Jake unlocked her chains with shaking hands. "I would never forget about you. Are you hurt?" "Nothing serious, but we need to get these others free too." Jake looked at the other prisoners in Amy's group. They were all young humans, probably taken from different colonies. "Can you fight?" he asked them. A boy named Kevin nodded. "Amy taught us some things while we were locked up. We can help." Jake handed Kevin a knife from his belt. "Stay close and do what Amy tells you." More guards were coming from the main entrance. Jake counted. At least 20 Zephyrians with rifles and energy weapons. His crew was good, but they were outnumbered. "We need another way out," Jake said into his communicator. "Working on it," Maria's voice came back. "There is a service tunnel behind the platform. I can blow a hole in the wall." "Do it." Maria threw one of her explosives at the back wall of the auction hall. The blast was loud and bright, and chunks of metal flew everywhere. When the smoke cleared, there was a hole big enough for people to crawl through. "Move!" Jake shouted. He and Amy started herding the freed prisoners toward the hole. Pete and Dan covered them, shooting at any guard who got too close. Amy helped the other prisoners climb through the hole. She was calm and focused, just like Jake had trained her to be. Even after days of captivity, she was thinking clearly and helping others. Jake was the last one through the hole. As he climbed into the service tunnel, he heard the Zephyrian guards shouting behind him. They were angry and confused. Their perfect auction had turned into a disaster. The service tunnel was narrow and dark. Jake used a small light to guide the group through the maze of pipes and cables. Maria had studied the station plans, so she knew which way to go. They reached the docking level 10 minutes later. Jake could hear alarms ringing throughout the station. Security forces would be looking for them everywhere. "The ship is this way," Pete said, leading them toward their docking bay. But when they turned the corner, they found 20 more Zephyrian guards waiting for them. The aliens had figured out where they were going and set up an ambush. The lead guard was another captain, this one with golden armor and a scar across his face. "Jake Morrison," he said in accented human speech. "You have caused much trouble. Surrender now and we will make your death quick." Jake pushed Amy behind him and raised his rifle. "I have a better idea. Get out of my way and maybe I will let some of you live." The Zephyrian captain laughed. "You are outnumbered 4-1. You cannot win this fight." Jake smiled coldly. "You obviously do not know much about humans." The shooting started again. But this time, Jake was not alone. Amy was beside him with a captured Zephyrian rifle. Pete and the others formed a line behind them. Even the freed prisoners had found weapons and were ready to fight. The battle for Haven Station was just beginning, and Jake Morrison was about to show the galaxy why humans were the most dangerous species in known space. The gunfight in the docking corridor lasted only 30 seconds, but it felt like hours to Jake Morrison. He and Amy fought side by side, their rifles cutting down Zephyrian guards with deadly precision. The other freed prisoners followed their guide, using captured weapons to fight for their freedom. Amy moved like Jake had trained her, fast and smart. She took cover behind a support beam and picked off guards who were trying to flank their position. Her shots were clean and accurate. Jake felt proud watching her fight, but also worried. His 16-year-old daughter should not have to kill people to survive. The Zephyrian captain with the golden armor tried to charge their position. Jake put 3 bullets in his chest before he got halfway there. The other guards lost their nerve. When their leader fell, some of them ran. The rest died trying to fight humans who refused to give up. "Clear!" Pete Collins shouted from the far end of the corridor. "Path to the ship is open." Jake grabbed Amy's arm. "Come on, we need to move before more guards show up." They ran through the docking bay toward the Iron Wolf. Maria Santos was already at the ship starting the engines. Dan Parker was working on the docking clamps that held them to the station. The freed prisoners followed close behind, scared but determined to escape. Just as they reached the ship's loading ramp, more alarms started ringing. Jake heard the sound of heavy boots running toward them. Station security was finally getting organized. "Everyone inside," Jake ordered. "Amy, get the prisoners to the passenger quarters. Pete, get us ready to fly. Maria, I need maximum power. To engines." Amy helped guide the freed humans into the ship while Jake covered the loading ramp with his rifle. A squad of Zephyrian guards appeared at the entrance to the docking bay. Jake shot the first two, and the rest took cover behind cargo. "Containers." "Dad, come on," Amy called from inside the ship. "We need to go." Jake fired a few more shots to keep the guards back, then ran up the ramp. The Iron Wolf lifted off from the docking platform before the ramp was fully closed. Jake could hear enemy bullets hitting the ship's hull as they flew away from Haven Station. The ship jumped to hyperspace 10 minutes later. They were safe for now, but Jake knew the Zephyrians would follow them. This fight was far from over. Jake found Amy in the passenger quarters, helping treat the wounds of the other freed prisoners. She had found the ship's medical supplies and was cleaning cuts and bandaging injuries. The boy named Kevin had a broken arm, but Amy had made a sling for him. "How are they doing?" Jake asked quietly. "They will be okay," Amy said. "Most of the injuries are not serious, but they are scared. They do not know what happens next." Jake looked at the 6 young humans they had rescued. They were all around Amy's age, taken from different colonies across human space. They had been prisoners for weeks or months. Their families probably thought they were dead. "We will get them home," Jake promised. "All of them." Amy finished bandaging a girl's cut hand and came over to talk with her father privately. They walked to a quiet corner of the passenger area where the others could not hear them. "I need to tell you something," Amy said. "This was not random. The Zephyrians who took me knew exactly who I was. They knew about you, about our family. Someone paid them extra to capture me specifically." Jake felt his anger rising again. "Who? Do you know who hired them?" "I heard them talking when they thought I was asleep. There is someone called the broker who arranges special jobs. He wanted me taken alive and unharmed. The guards were told to be very careful with me." Jake thought about this information. The broker was a name he had heard before during the war, a mysterious figure who sold information and arranged deals between different criminal groups. If the broker was involved, this was bigger than just slave trading. "Did you hear anything else?" Jake asked. "They said someone wanted to use me to control you, to make you do something. I do not know what." Jake put his hand on Amy's shoulder. "It does not matter what they wanted. You are safe now. That is all that counts." Amy shook her head. "Dad, you do not understand. I heard them talking about other human families too. They have a list of targets, families of important humans in the military and government. This is not just about us." Jake felt cold. If the Zephyrians were targeting the families of human leaders, it meant someone was planning something big, an attack on human space maybe, or they wanted to blackmail human officials into cooperation. "We need to warn people," Amy said. "My friends at school, their parents work for the Colonial Defense Force. If the Zephyrians are targeting military, families." Jake was proud of his daughter for thinking beyond her own safety. Even after being kidnapped and held prisoner, she was worried about protecting others. She had inherited more than just his fighting skills. She had his sense of duty. Pete Collins appeared in the doorway. "Jake, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are picking up Zephyrian ships following us. At least 6 vessels, maybe more." Jake cursed under his breath. The Zephyrians were not going to let them escape easily. "How long until they catch us?" 4 hours, maybe 5. The Iron Wolf is fast, but we are carrying extra people now. That slows us down," Jake thought quickly. They could not outrun 6 enemy ships while carrying passengers. They needed somewhere safe to hide, or they needed to fight. Fighting 6 ships with 1 was not good odds, even for Jake Morrison. "There is another option," Amy said quietly. "We could go to the Kepler Nebula. I remember you telling stories about hiding there during the war. Jake smiled. His daughter had been listening to his old war stories more carefully than he thought. The Kepler Nebula was full of gas clouds and radiation that made sensors work poorly. It was a good place to hide, but also dangerous to navigate. That might work, Pete said. The nebula is only 2 hours away. We could lose them in the gas clouds. Jake made his decision. Set course for the nebula, but first send a message to Colonial Command. Tell them about the broker and the target list. Other families need to be warned. Dan Parker's voice came, over the ship's communication system. Jake, you need to see this. I'm picking up a distress signal from inside the nebula. Human ship under attack. Jake ran to the bridge with Amy right behind him. On the main screen, they could see a small, human transport ship surrounded by 3 Zephyrian fighters. The transport was damaged and trying to escape, but the fighters were faster. How many people on that ship? Jake asked. Sensors showed 12 humans, Dan reported. Looks like a family transport, maybe refugees from one of the outer colonies. Jake looked at the tactical display. If they went to help the transport, the Zephyrians chasing them would catch up. But if they did not help, 12 innocent humans would die. Amy put her hand on her father's arm. We have to help them, Dad. You taught me that we protect people who cannot protect themselves. Jake looked at his daughter. She was right, of course. This was what humans did. They helped each other, even when it was dangerous. Pete, take us in. Maria, charge all weapons. We are going to show these Zephyrians what happens when they attack human civilians. The Iron Wolf changed course toward the battle. Jake Morrison was about to prove once again why he was the most dangerous human in the galaxy. And this time his daughter would be fighting beside him. The Iron Wolf dropped out of hyperspace right into the middle of the battle. 3 Zephyrian fighters were circling a damaged human transport like hungry sharks. The transport's shields were failing and its engines were smoking. Jake Morrison took manual control of his ship's weapons. Amy, get to the gunner station. Pete, bring us around for an attack run. Maria, give me everything the engines have. Amy ran to the rear gunner position and strapped herself in. She had trained on these weapons during family trips when she was younger. Jake had taught her to shoot, but he never thought she would need to use those skills in real combat. The first Zephyrian fighter never saw them coming. Jake's opening shot hit it in the engine compartment. The alien ship exploded in a ball of fire. The other 2 fighters immediately broke off their attack on the transport and turned toward the Iron Wolf. 2 fighters coming at us from different angles, Pete called out. They are trying to box us in. Jake rolled the ship to avoid the first fighter's laser fire. The beams passed close enough to the hull that he could see them through the bridge windows. Amy opened fire with the rear guns, her shots chasing the second fighter as it tried to get behind them. I got him, Amy shouted over the communication system. Her shots had hit the second fighter's wing, sending it spinning out of control. The pilot managed to eject before his ship crashed into an asteroid. The third fighter was more careful. Its pilot was experienced and knew how to fight. He kept his distance and tried to wear down the Iron Wolf's shields with long-range shots. Jake had fought pilots like this during the war. They were dangerous because they were patient. But Jake knew how to deal with patience. He flew straight at the enemy fighter, closing the distance fast. The Zephyrian pilot was surprised by the aggressive move. He tried to turn away, but Jake anticipated the maneuver. His shots caught the fighter in the cockpit. The alien ship went dark and drifted away. Transport ship, this is Jake Morrison, Jake said over the radio. Are you all right? Do you need assistance? A woman's voice answered, shaky but relieved. This is Captain Linda Wells of the civilian transport New Hope. Thank you for saving us. We have wounded on board and our engines are damaged. Jake brought the Iron Wolf alongside the transport. Through the windows he could see the damage from the Zephyrian attack. Hull breaches, burned equipment, and frightened faces looking back at him. We can take your people aboard, Jake offered. Our ship has medical facilities and room for passengers. We would be grateful, Captain Wells replied. We have 8 adults and 4 children. Some of them need medical attention. Amy helped transfer the refugees from the damaged transport to the Iron Wolf. Among them was a family from Colony Prime, the same settlement where Jake and Amy lived. The father had been wounded protecting his children during the attack. Amy recognized the kids from her school. "Mr. Morrison," one of the children said when she saw Jake. "What are you doing here?" Jake smiled and knelt down to the child's level. "I am rescuing people just like you. Are you hurt?" The little girl shook her head. "The bad aliens tried to take us, but Mom and Dad fought them off. Then you came and saved us." Jake looked at the girl's parents. They were scared but trying to be brave for their children. These were ordinary people caught up in something much bigger than they understood. Dan Parker's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Jake, we have a problem. The Zephyrian ships that were following us just dropped out of hyperspace. 6 heavy cruisers, and they brought friends. I count 20 ships total." Jake ran to the bridge and looked at the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet was spread out in a battle formation. They were not just chasing him anymore. They were here to fight a war. "This is Admiral Corvin of the Zephyrian Collective," a voice said over the radio. "Jake Morrison, you have interfered with our operations for the last time. Surrender now, and we will make your death quick." Jake recognized the name. Admiral Corvin was one of the Zephyrian military leaders who had fought against humans during the border conflicts. He was smart and ruthless, and he had good reason to hate Jake Morrison. "This is Jake Morrison," Jake replied. "I have a message for you, Admiral. Leave human space now, or I will destroy every ship you have." Corvin laughed. "You have 1 ship, Morrison. I have 20. Your reputation will not save you this time." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Pete was ready to fight. Maria had all weapons charged and engines running hot. Dan was already jamming enemy communications. These people had followed him through impossible battles before. But this time was different. They had civilians on board, including children. Jake could not risk their lives in a hopeless fight. Amy appeared on the bridge. "Dad, I have an idea. What if we do not fight them here?" Jake looked at his daughter. "What do you mean?" "The Nebula has lots of gas clouds and radiation. Their sensors will not work well in there. We could lead them into the thickest part and then use the environment against them." Pete nodded. "The kid is right. In the Nebula, their numbers will not help them as much. They will not be able to coordinate their attacks." Jake thought about Curry. Amy's plan was risky, but it might work. The Kepler Nebula was full of dangerous radiation and unstable gas pockets. If he could get the Zephyrian fleet deep enough into it, the Nebula itself might do most of the fighting for him. "Set course for the Nebula core," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." The Iron Wolf raced toward the heart of the Kepler Nebula, with 20 Zephyrian ships chasing behind. Jake flew through gas clouds that glowed with dangerous energy. The radiation played havoc with their sensors, but Jake knew these paths from the war. "They are following us in," Dan reported. "All 20 ships." Jake smiled grimly. Admiral Corvin was making the same mistake that many enemies had made before. He was so focused on catching Jake Morrison that he was not thinking about where the chase was leading. The Iron Wolf dove deeper into the Nebula. Jake flew through narrow passages between radiation storms. Behind them, the Zephyrian ships were having trouble staying in formation. The Nebula was breaking up their fleet. "Now," Jake said. He turned the Iron Wolf around and flew straight back, toward the enemy ships. The Zephyrians were spread out in a long line, trying to follow Jake's path through the Nebula. They could not see each other clearly because of the radiation. When Jake came at them from the front, they started shooting at their own ships by mistake. Amy worked the rear guns while Jake flew attack runs on confused enemy vessels. Pete and Maria coordinated their attacks to cause maximum damage. In 15 minutes, they had destroyed 6 Zephyrian ships and damaged several others. Admiral Corvin tried to reorganize his fleet, but the Nebula made communication almost impossible. His ships were scattered and lost. Some of them flew into radiation storms and were destroyed. Others collided with asteroids they could not see. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it was over, only 5 Zephyrian ships limped away from the Nebula. Admiral Corvin's flagship was one of them, but it was badly damaged. Jake brought the Iron Wolf out of the Nebula and set course for human space. They had won the battle, but the war was just beginning. "We need to warn Colonial Command," Jake said. The Zephyrians are planning something big. This attack was just the start. Amy looked at the tactical display showing the wreckage of enemy ships. Do you think they will try again? Jake put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. They will. Try. But next time human space will be ready for them, and they will remember what happens when aliens threaten human families. The rescued civilians were safe. Amy was home. But Jake Morrison knew that his fight to protect humanity was far from over. The galaxy had learned that humans would fight for their families no matter the odds, and sometimes that was enough to win wars.